Hello, hello, hello. Let me first put my boots on. And let me also say, I'm struggling. Uh, Thank you for all my new subscribers. Hello, how y'all doing? Appreciate y'all. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And let's get into it. So, somebody put a request in my comment section to talk about plants that are more or less shade tolerant, and that was a good idea. So I'm going to do that while my soaker hose is going. So, and Lord, we ain't had no rain. I'm almost out of rainwater. Jesus. Okay, so let me talk about one plant. Y'all see this bloom? It's so pretty. All right, so these are sweet potatoes. Right now they are in the shade. However, I feel like in order for these get shade in the morning, but then for the rest of the day they get sunlight. So they get about 5 to 6 hours of sunlight. And I'm gonna be honest and say this: can sweet potatoes take sun all day? Yeah, they can. But if you, depending on where you live, so let me preface this video by saying I live in zone 8A. I think it's A or B. I did a video before about why, to me, growing zones more or less are deceiving, but we won't get on that. If you want to know about that, look at my old video. But I live in zone 8A. So for the next week or two, it's supposed to be 100 to 104. No rain. It's very humid here. In my opinion, today's humidity is supposed to be about 50%. But it can get up to 60 and 70%. And when it's like that, it's absolutely miserable. It's miserable at 100. But when it's 100 degrees and 60 and 70% humidity, it's ridiculous. So, y'all, when I talk, keep that in mind. If you fall in that category, for instance, if you in Georgia, Florida, well, let's leave Florida out. Florida's a little bit different. If you want good growing advice about Florida, look at Dan, permaculture, and it's some other people in Florida can give you better advice about Florida, because their growing season is so crazy and they zones vary so much, because they get all the way, I think Miami is zone 10. But anyway, if you're in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, the bottom of Arkansas, not the top of Arkansas, not the mountains. The mountains is totally different. Places like that where your season is long, your summers are hot and humid, this is probably going to apply to you. People in Arizona, Las Vegas, these desert climates that are very hot, but yet and still in the wintertime, you still can kind of get some very cold nights. Not necessarily talking about Southern California. They don't get a lot of freezing except in certain areas. And those are usually not really Southern California, get a lot of that freezing. But Nevada and Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, they can get some freezing. Y'all almost need to take and cover all y'all stuff, because I'm telling you now, y'all stuff gonna burn up. That dry heat like that, it's the dryness and the heat that makes it burn up. So keep in mind that plays a role. The humidity plays a role in how much water your plants lose through the day in the sunlight. So if it's dry and hot, they're losing water faster and it's hotter. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to water more, or if you just shade them, that'll help them not lose as much water. So like I said, y'all keep that in mind. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. So now I'm gonna go through this garden and I'm gonna attempt to try to show you what I'm talking about. So like I said, my sweet potatoes, they get about 5 to 6 hours of sun. I planted them before in a place where they were getting 8 hours of sun, and I would come out here, and if I didn't water them very, very, very heavily, they would droop and look crazy. And that year I actually did not really get good sweet potatoes, because you need a good amount of water. Y'all see that lizard? You need a good amount of water to get good sweet potatoes. Y'all see him? I don't know if y'all can see him. He's so little. But so sweet potatoes can take some shade. I'm going to show you where I'm growing them in an even shadier location. And later on, when I harvest them, I'll make mention about that again. Greens, these greens, they get sun for most of the day. If you notice, that bed's in the sun, this bed's in the shade. Your greens can take shade as well. Your greens are you're only growing them for the leaves anyway. So they don't need a ton of sun. They gonna grow leaves anyway. So in my opinion, oh, these cicadas are bad this year. Um, in my opinion, you can grow greens in the sun or the shade. You should get decent results. They don't need a lot of fertilization. All they need is nitrogen. So you can get them, whether you make your own fertilizer like I do, you can give them weed tea, you can give, and they'll be good. That's the greens. Let me come around here. I got a couple of things that are not greens. So my blueberries, I did have them in the shade. They were actually producing in the shade. I have moved them to the sun up here. And now that I've moved them to the sun, I've gotten a lot more growth. So I'm going to say that your blueberries are going to do better in the sun. But make sure you keep them watered. They still will produce in the shade. So for those of you that kind of have shady conditions that you can't really control, you still can grow blueberries. I still get blueberries. I think if I leave them in the sun, I'll get more blueberries. That's yet to be seen, but I know it is putting on a lot more growth now that's up in the sun. That's catnip. The catnip, it's in the mint family. Sun or shade, doesn't matter. Just keep it watered. This is a goji berry. Goji berries do a little bit better in the sun, but I'm going to tell you something about goji berries. Keep them watered. Keep them watered. They're almost like wet feet, more or less. If you let a goji berry dry out, the drying out will kill it more than the sun or the shade, because I've grown them in sun and shade. It does do better in the sun, though. Let's go over here and look at these peas. So cow peas, I wouldn't recommend. Okay, if you absolutely have to have cow peas and you don't have any sun or a super sunny location, they will grow in the sun. What's going to happen is they're going to produce less. I grew them in the sun, in the shade last year as an experiment. They do better when they at least get 2, 3, 4 hours of sun. And it doesn't even have to be full sun. It can be dappled sun. Because see, in the morning, these going to get shade. And then it's later on in the day they get full sun. They also do better when they climb. Cow peas will produce more for you if you let them climb and or run. I find they do better if they climb. For instance, you see all these down here? It's not a whole lot of peas. Like you see one right there. There's one right there, but look at this. See where I let them climb? Can you see all the peas? See how it's more? See all those? To me, for me, for whatever reason, my cow peas, now these them things, that ain't even supposed to be cow peas. We're not gonna talk about that. I find that when you let them climb, they do a little better. These seeds ain't doing that hot, but you can see there's 3 of them right there. There's another one. There's another one. Like, it's more of them. So these get a good amount of sun. These get about 5 hours. Carrots, I've never grown them in the shade, so I can't really tell you. I've only ever grown them in the sun, and I generally get pretty good carrots. I've not had a problem with carrots. Peanuts, you can grow them in the sun and the shade. They produce more in the sun. You'll get, meaning when I say produce more, you'll get more peanuts in the sun. However, if you were just growing these to benefit your soil, you can grow them in the shade. The roots are still going to make the little nitrogen nodules. You're not going to have a problem. My Swiss chard, never grown it in the shade. Don't know how it produces in the shade. However, in the sun, I know that when it's extremely hot and it's not well watered, it will droop on you. So if you're going to have it in direct sun, water it, water it, water it. The kale, the same thing goes with the kale. You can grow it in sun or shade. I've done both. Peppers. So these are serranos, and when I talk about peppers, I'm just going to say peppers in general. Peppers in general, I've grown them in the shade. For me, they do not grow that well. They do not produce well. Can you do it? Can you get away with it? Yeah. But I find they like the heat. They like the sun. They produce better. Will they droop sometimes if they're not watered deeply enough? If their roots aren't a little bit moist? Yes, they will try to droop on you. But these over here get 6 hours sun, I want to say. 5, 6 hours sun. And if I lift up, you can just see all the peppers or whatever. These are the Scotch bonnets. And you can see it's peppers, blooms, galore, everywhere. These haven't started making yet. I anticipate them to start making sometime soon. Okra loves the sun. Sun, loves the heat, loves the sun. My okra very rarely wilts, even when the soil is not that moist. Like, it's just, it loves the sun. This is Jamaican sorrel. It's in the same family as okra and the hibiscus family. Same deal. I've never grown it in, actually I have grown it in the shade. It did not do well at all. Same thing with okra. I tried it in the shade one time, did not do well at all. So these hibiscus family, at least okra, sorrel, I don't recommend you grow them in the shade. They won't produce. They won't grow very well. They just don't do well. Squash, I've never tried to grow it in the shade. I've always grown it in the sun. But this spot is a shadier spot. So they get only like 4 hours here. The vine borers did get me, so a lot of my squash died, y'all. What you see left is pretty much all cushaw. And all of this is cushaw. It's grown out from up under. You can see that's another okra. And you can see how big this cushaw is. And you can also see how bad the cicadas are. Those are cicada when they molt. They leave their shells everywhere. Comfrey, grow it in the sun or the shade. I've had luck with both, no problem. Tomatoes, I've grown. Okay, so tomatoes they're gonna produce more if you put them in the sun. However, when it gets hot, they start to wilt and look crazy. You see how these are not looking so hot? The heat is kind of getting to them, but they will still produce because a tomato is just a trooper. But when it gets hotter in the season, if you got some shady tomatoes, you'll notice they'll produce a little bit more for you and they'll look a little bit better. Because I have grown them in the back, but I've gotten production out of both of them. Because as you can see, I got some tomatoes I need to harvest. Okay, that one failed. These are black cherries, by the way. And these are mini San Marzanos. So yeah, your tomatoes, they like the sun, but the sun can be brutal on them. They also will stop setting fruit when it gets past a certain temperature. That's normal. A lot of people pull their tomatoes, which I warn against, and I tell people do not pull them. Leave them because they will start back making as soon as it cools off. That's why I always leave mine. Like these look crazy like this. In October, they'll go back to making and I'll have tomatoes and everybody else has pulled theirs. At least for the most part. Peppers, where I talked about that. Swiss chard, where I talked about that. Watermelons. Watermelons really do not start taking off and doing a thug thizzle until it gets hot. Full sun for melons if you can. Watermelons, I've never gotten them to produce in the shade, ever. Watermelons can take 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of sun. Now back here it looks crazy, but up there it looks good. That's just how your vines grow. All the pretty new leaves are at the end. Back here at the back where the vines are, it won't put on new leaves and the old leaves will die off. They kind of try to mulch themselves as the leaves die, but that's just kind of what they do. Squash is similar. Well, actually squash does it less. Look how long that is. Look how pretty that is. Anyway, but yeah, so watermelons, sun. Melons in general, you can get away with like cantaloupes and things like that. Like I grew those Santa Claus melons in the shade. I did not get very good production. I feel like you get much better production in the sun, but if you have to grow in the shade, if you have to, you can do it. It's a little bit more tedious. You have to really stay on top of watering and maybe not full shade, maybe like partial shade. You can get away with melons. Full shade, I feel like they still may not do well. Same thing with these goji berries here. I talked about those over there. Mulberries, doesn't matter. Shade, sun, poor soils, good soils. Feed it, don't feed it. Water it, don't water it. If you feed it and water it, you'll get more production. If you do nothing to it, you'll still get growth. It'll still grow. Because I'm going to show y'all the example that I'm about to hack down soon. It's been so hot, I should have cut it down while it was still cold. This tree here, this is a mulberry. Guess how old this is? That's been in the ground 2.5 years. So if you want a shade tree, now this is a male, that's why I'm cutting it down. It's not edible. I don't want any more trees that are not edible. If I'm like, mulberries are a great shade tree and an edible. Get a female. That's a male. And Josh, I need to respond to your email. I've been tripping. These gooseberries, they can survive in the shade, but no, they need sun to actually produce. So gooseberries, and they don't need full sun, at least part sun. I would give the gooseberries part sun. So as we walk back here, blackberries, shade or sun, but they actually do pretty good in part shade because that's where they grow in nature. They grow at the edges of thickets, but you can find them growing wide in the open in the sun. Blackberries, in my experience, they'll make regardless. It doesn't matter if it's sun shade, they'll still make. So figs, you can grow them. I'm talking about the figs, but I ain't even got up on them yet, so y'all just bear with me. Figs, you can grow them in full sun, part shade. You can grow them in shade. You'll get more production in full sun. These are part shade. I know it looks like full sun, but at the evening time they get sun. But you will get a lot more figs if they're in full sun. They also will grow much bigger if they're in full sun unless you keep them pruned down. So that's figs. Figs are a desert plant, so that should make sense to you as to why they do better in full sun, because they are natively a full sun kind of plant. If y'all wonder what I'm doing, I'm picking up some of these leaves that fell off. I wasn't watering adequately, and it dropped some of its leaves. Hopefully my brown turkey won't drop its fruit. I think I see one that's ready. Look at me. Nah, well, let me see. It may not be all the way ready. But as I walk and talk, so this guava, this is in pretty much in shade. Oh, that fig sweet. Oh, that's good. Guava, you can grow them in sun and shade. This isn't a guava. That's not a guava. That's not a guava. Those are butterfly weed plants. Sun, shade, don't matter. My turmeric, the turmeric I have in the shade does much better than the turmeric I have in full sun. So I'm going to say, but I've seen people grow it in full sun. This woman in California grows it in full sun, but California sun in Southern California is different than this sun. This sun is burn your stuff up sun. The guava cheese, I think they would grow better and faster in full sun, but they are actually doing okay in part shade. Like I said, these butterfly weeds, these are butterflies like these. They see the little flowers, so they do well. But yeah, the guava, I'm actually thinking about digging that guava up and putting it in the front and in a big pot and letting it grow a lot faster. Citrus do good in full sun, but yeah, citrus do good in full sun. Let's say full sun, but the sun can be a bit brutal on them. I'm growing these in a fairly shady condition, and you can see they're growing well. So you can grow them in shade as well. This is partial shade. It's not full shade. It's a lot of shade. I actually would like these to get maybe an hour or two more of sun a day, but they don't, and I just don't have the benefit right now of doing that. Peaches, you can grow them in part shade to full sun. In my opinion, peaches in full shade here, they don't do well. A lot of times your fruit gets sunburned, the tree starts to burn, and maybe it's just the variety that I have. I do not know what variety this is. Don't ask me. When I bought it at Walmart, all it said was peach, and I'll prove it to you. I still got the tag on the tree right in there. Peach. That's all it say, like it's only one peach in the world. So I recommend you give your peaches, if you can, a little bit of shade, a little bit, because just when it gets to this part of the summer when it's 100 degrees every day, they kind of struggle. Pears, full sun, full shade. In full shade, they won't make no fruit, but in sun, you will get a nice amount of fruit. They do well. They do well in sunny conditions, and really, if you can get like half shade, like half a day shade, half a day sun, your pears will love it, and your fruit will love it too. Because once again, your fruit won't get sun scalded. It's bad. I'm gonna show y'all these sweet potatoes. So these sweet potatoes are grown more or less. They may get an hour or two of sun every day, and I'm gonna see how these sweet potatoes do, and see how good of sweet potatoes I get. Once again, this is some more turmeric. It's doing well like this. These are true yams. These are Dioscorea. I forget which ones, but they're the cinnamon vine. You can eat the aerial tubers and the yam in the ground. These are grown in mostly shade, but that's the way they grow in nature. So those, you most definitely, you can grow them in the shade. You can grow them in the sun. When I grew them in the sun, they kind of wanted to burn up. They didn't look as pretty as they look right there. See how pretty it is? Um, and they're making their little aerial tubers now too. Those tubers will get bigger. Um, this is an apple tree. It needs a pollinator. This apple tree does fine. It's like partial shade. I need to prune it badly. This persimmon, I feel like this would do better in full sun because persimmons are such slow growers. I feel like it'll do better in full sun. But I don't have those kind of conditions, at least not right now where I want to put this tree. Maybe some things will shift later and I'll have a better solution for that. But it will make fruit. It does make fruit. This is the sunniest spot right in here. So, like I said this morning, don't go by now. It's shady in the morning. But as the sun moves across the sky, all of this stuff will get sun at various parts of the day. Strawberries, don't plant them in the sun. At least not in the South. Don't plant them in the sun. When you see people planting strawberries in the sun, they're in California or somewhere else. The sun will burn your strawberries up. Strawberries are an understory plant. They are not intended to be in the sun. I don't care what that tag say. I have killed more strawberries and my production has been very low on strawberries, putting strawberries in the sun. Do not put your strawberries in the sun. Put them at least part shade. You can even do full shade. I get strawberries in full shade. And my plants actually survive versus if I put them in full sun, they burn up. So these first grapes you're going to see right here, these are grapes, they're muscadines. Muscadines, I'm going to tell you right now, they prefer full sun. As long as you keep them watered, they won't droop on you. This is like, it don't look like it, but this gets sun majority of the day. It gets about 5 or 6 hours. This is the same thing with my blackberries, raspberries, but like I told y'all before, blackberries and raspberries, I've grown them in sun and shade. They produce either way. You'll just get more fruit if you have sun, but if you in a condition, because sometimes you can't control your conditions. If you're in a condition where it's kind of shady, or you got a shady spot where you want to plant something, it may behoove you to plant them there. And it also may help the plant sometimes. Sometimes the plant is less stressed if it's got a little shade and it's not as hot. These muscadines, they don't care. They sun all day. They can take it. They just don't care. Elderberry, same way. Elderberry, can you grow it in shade? Yes, you won't get as many elderberries. Will it do sun? Yes, love sun. The places where I've seen it in sun, it flowers heavily, makes elderberries heavily. So elderberry can take the sun. This is kind of a tropical area. These bananas definitely can take full sun. But if you don't have full sun, you can grow them in partial shade. I wouldn't grow them in full shade. They're just not going to grow well for you. I've tried that. I've even killed them in too much shade. This is taro. That one I would say full sun. But then again, this is my first year growing taro. Where it's growing at now, it gets a good amount of sun, like about 4 or 5 hours. And it's doing okay so far. That leaf died, don't know why. But another one is coming in. But yeah, my bananas, it's a lot of bananas in here. This is a dwarf Cavendish. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's probably 5 or 6 of them in here. 5, 6, 7. So it's like seven bananas in there in that corm. So yeah, the bananas, good. Once again, turmeric. In my opinion, it's just so good in shade. Look how pretty. I mean, this gets sun. Don't get me wrong. It gets like 3 or 4 hours. But so let's say it's partial sun, part shade. This is ginger here. I think this ginger would do better if it was getting more sunlight. But ginger will grow in the shade. Longevity spinach, sun, shade, it don't matter. That side gets more sun. This side gets more shade. They're both growing the same. Like I said, melons. This is a lemon drop melon. Cucumbers, sun or shade. I've gotten production out of both of them. They're less stressed in part shade. They do need some sun to produce flowers and fruit. So you want to give them some sun, but they don't need 6, 7, 8 hours of sun. Can you grow them like that? Yeah. But just here, when I grow mine like that, they just seem like they droop so much, and it just seemed like they was burning up. Tomatoes back here, we talked about that. Yeah, peppers back here, we talked about that. So we've talked about just about everything. that's in my garden really that doesn't need sun or shade. Let's talk papayas. Papayas, I think as far as production and growth, it's full sun. I'm going to actually move my papayas to a spot where they're getting full sun, and I'm going to see how they do. I just haven't moved them yet. So, because I was waiting for them to really kind of take root after I up potted them. So I am going to do that. But yeah, so that's that. I am going, the guy also asked, or person, I don't know if it was male or female, but they asked for my fertilization schedule. So I will also do that video as well. So y'all stay tuned. And if you got any questions, comments, whatever, leave them in the comment section. And until next time, see you guys later.